Thank you, Leo, for the introductions, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for today, your time to attend these sessions. And I hope that these sessions will provide some value and knowledge, of this testing regarding the cables and networks. Now, I know that online presentation is there's always a challenge, not just for the speaker, even for the audience. So if you have any question, you can just type in the chat group. By the end of the presentation, we will go through the question. Or at the end of the presentation, you can just unmute yourself. If you have any question, you can just ask out, speak out the questions. And we will try to respond to as many questions as possible. And also online presentation, also we try not to take too long because everyone get very tired. So again, let me do an introduction. My name is Dixon. I work for AEM Singapore. At AEM, the company actually do quite lots of things. And I belong to a business unit that develop cable tester. So our cable tester is actually engineered, made, and manufactured in Singapore office. Right. So the tester that I'm going to show you today is two of the range that we have. And also, I think the more important part is talk about the testing application. Okay. So it very closely today, my topic is very closely related to a smart building application or any building application, okay, that connect up to IoT devices. All right. So what is my agenda today? I think the agenda today is also to know that what the current technology in the market, be it in a hospital, be it in a commercial office, or be it in a data center. You have many connectivity. It's not just for the network or for your phone system, but it go beyond that. It go beyond to other devices that is connected to your building. And then we talk just a little bit of IoT, which this term has been so-called, you're hearing this term for many times, okay, we're talking about Internet of Things. Okay, but the main focus, okay, is looking at what are we testing? What are the parameters that we need to consider? How this parameter will affect your network, okay? How this testing result give assurance, okay, to your network, to your application, and so on. All right. And then we also talk about various kind of testing. Now we always talk about cable testing, copper cable, fiber cable, but we also have to also look at other testing that is affecting your cable. Okay, which in this topic today we'll talk about multigate. That means signal integrity testing. When you transmit 1 gig, you transmit 10 gig. How do you know your 1 gig signal at the end of the cable are purely so-called without interference, without any loss, right? So we can talk about that as well. Then we also talk about PoE. This PoE subject cannot be separated with the cable anymore because it's always together. When you run such a cabling, you will always connected to some PoE devices. All right, and PoE devices is not just testing the cable or good for cable, good for the PoE, but more than that. Okay, then we talk about some of the test report, and so on. Then we wrap up, and then we go with any questions that for today. Okay. So as you know, I mean, in any facility, any project that you do, okay, when you run cable, the cable needs to connect to certain devices. Could be the building systems, could be your network, could be the security, all right, could be for the building automations and so on. Okay, so many of these systems, okay, are riding on what? Riding on your cable. Okay, be it copper cable, be it fiber cable. So your cable need to be able to support all these applications. Okay. However, cable also pose a operation issue, as in, the space that you need for your cable connectivities. You need to place your equipment rack. You need to run your cable on the cable trays. Okay, and then make sure that the cables are able to support, okay, down the road any change in technology, right? You don't want to install the cable today and next year you need to change because there's new technology. So you want a cable that can last you at least 5 years down the road, or even longer, or 10 years. All right. So all these consideration on what kind of cable to use have to be in place, okay, when you do the project, when you do the construction for the building. So IoT is talking about all the various devices that is running on IP, that's running on PoE, that's running on your existing infrastructure that is structured cabling. Okay, so we know in the past, okay, the cable are having different category, as in different performance. Okay, when I started with this industry, I think I came in when Cat 5e was relatively booming. A lot of people running Cat 5e, and then very soon we overtake by Cat 6, right? And then now we are talking about Cat 6a. So you can see cable category or cable performance changes quite frequently. Why? Because of equipment, because of all the devices, all the system in your building. Okay, so we are talking about cables, okay, that is supposedly must be ready to support future technology. Okay, and future technology, we are talking about just purely Ethernet signal, either 1 gig or 10 gig. Okay, and then we're talking about PoE, we are talking about running the same power on the same cable. Okay, so as we go higher and higher in terms of the performance, okay, this power and data could create some issue as well. So using the right infrastructure, or I say using the right cable, okay, will prolong your application, will help you to have longer cycle in terms of your building infrastructure. So time have changed. Okay, so if you are involved in project, if you are doing consultancy, or if you are doing spec-in with the customers, always think forward 5 years down the road, you know, what are the application. Okay, sometimes fiber cable could be one of the so-called better choice nowadays, because as we know, Cat 6a is a kind of ceiling. Okay, ceiling as in they kind of like reaching the ceiling. Of course, you have Cat 8, but Cat 8 is having a shorter distance than your 90 meter or 100 meter to run Cat 8. So you have to consider all these factors in when you're running a cable infrastructure project. Okay, so again, this is just an overview to show you how important is the physical cable, right? Because it's not just testing the signal, but also can your cable deliver 100% without any issue, without any noise interference, without any or minimize losses along your cable. Okay, and is your cable able to support power, PoE? As you know, power PoE, when we talk about it later, okay, even PoE have changed over the years, starting from as low as 15 watt. Now we are going with 90 watt. Who knows? It may go beyond 90 watts. As PoE increase, as power running on a cable increase, the temperature of the cable also has increased. So that's why there's a lot of consideration, okay? It's not just laying cable and then that's it, wash your hand and that's it. But there are a lot of consideration to understand what are the changing landscape in the market. So a lot of architect, I say in the network architect, when they build your network, they have to build based on the OSI layer. So this OSI layer is a basic building blocks in terms of building your networks. The top layer is basically your application, your software running all your system. While the bottom layer, the first layer, is talking about physical. Okay, then you have your network switch, your data link, and so on. So as you can see, everything right on your physical layer. Just like any house, if your house is not built on a strong foundation, your house will collapse. So physical layer is your foundation. So having a good physical layer will be able to support all your upper layer, okay, up to layer 7. Okay, so if I have time, I will teach you how to remember all this OSI layer. Okay, there's a trick about remember all these 7 layers. So what is important here in your view, in what I'm trying to say is the physical layer that is very critical, okay? Never underestimate a physical layer because it could make or break your whole entire IT architect. So after this overview, what I want to talk about is the test parameter. Now, this is a part where our so-called tester come in, or any tester come in that do the testing. Okay, a lot of user, when they look at the test report, they don't understand how this test result are going to impact their network. Okay, I believe that when up to a certain age, I would say certain age, you will go for health screening. Sometimes you go for doctor health screening to check your blood, to check your sugar, to check your blood pressure, to check your cholesterol. Then doctor will also give you a report. Okay, then we explain, okay, your cholesterol is within the limit, the range, your blood pressure is still okay, but at the borderline. So test report or test parameter is similar to trying to tell you how healthy is your cable. Okay, what do you need to address if your cable test parameter is not right? Okay, and also tell you that, you know, if let's say your infrastructure is good health, that it means that it probably can support you a longer time, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, okay, despite the changes in the technology. So this is why it is very critical, okay, to understand all these test parameters. Okay, so when we run project, or when as an end user, when they try to draft out the spec or for the cable for the building, whether it's for data center or hospital or government building or any commercial building, okay, at the end of the day is that they have to ensure, they have to understand what is the application they're going to run, what is the objective of this cabling, okay, what kind of network environment do you think you will have. Okay, so for example, I mean, as you can see, like as in the hospital, this environment is called critical environment. Why is it critical? You cannot afford to fail. Okay, you need to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You cannot fail. Critical. Okay, what happened if it fail? Okay, sometimes it could so-called be critical to life, right? It's not just for the equipment, but also life. What are the other critical environment? As you know, data center is considered critical. Okay, why is it critical? It support all your internet, so support all your application. Okay, so imagine, I mean, if you are running on a cloud service, if the data center is so-called out of service just for 5 minutes, maybe the banking sector cannot work. Okay, maybe the stock exchange cannot perform, cannot deliver the information, or any other government infrastructure. So environment is critical. Okay, so if you understand the complexity of the environment or the criticalness of the environment, okay, you might want to have redundancy, backup plan, and so on. Also, think about what is connected in the building. What is the equipment in future? Maybe LED lighting that run on PoE, security camera, security devices, building application. Okay, is things going to run on PoE? Likely so. Okay, as you can see, a lot of consideration now, like a lot of devices are trying to have additional so-called port, okay, for you to run with PoE. Okay, and then network speed. All of us know 10 gig. Okay, that is the so-called achievable speed for any commercial building. But of course, in data center, they're talking about 100, 200. Okay, some even get ready for 400 gig. Okay, so the network speed is critical. As you know that, you know, when you watch YouTube or video streaming, you can understand. Okay, for those maybe in my generation, we have different phases of internet speed, so we understand from a dial-up modem all the way to cable modem now, right? from 2.4 megabits. Now we have up to 10 gig kind of speed. So there is a big change we can see. So network speed is also need to consider. Okay. So cable to run, PoE, a lot of things to think about. Okay, if you're involved in design, involved in consultancy, or even as an end user yourself, you have to consider all these things. So for test parameter, okay, we have the first column, which is a very traditional test parameter that when we test cable, these are the parameters that will report on the cable performance, like length, delay skew, DC resistance, essential loss, crosstalk, return loss, and so on. Okay, so this test parameter, it kind of give you a understanding on what is the performance of your cable. Okay, so now this one does not talk about 10 gig, 1 gig. Can it run 1 gig? Can it run 10 gig? Okay, so there is a lot of misconception. Okay, in terms of thinking that cable, when you run Cat6a cable, you mean you can run 10 gig? Okay, by right it can, but it is not related, as in, doesn't mean that you put Cat6a, you will run 10 gig or 100 gig. Okay, why do I want to say that? Because a lot of customers have this misconception during the early days. All right, so cable is like roads, okay, on the roads. All right, so cable, we build the roads, whether it's a 1-lane road, 2-lane road, 3-lane road, 5-lane, build the roads. Okay, so what are the traffic? That means what are the signals around it? Can be motorbike, can be cars, can be bus that ride on the road. Okay, so cable is like road. We build the road first. We do not know what kind of traffic you're going to run on the road. We do not know what is the population of traffic you're going to run on the road. But we make sure that the road is sufficient so you won't get traffic jam. So you won't get slow signal, right? So always remember, when we do this parameter measuring, we are talking about how good is your road, how clean is your road, how straight is your road in order for the signal to travel. Then the second column, the TCL, ELTCL, and DCL. So TCL and ELTCTL. So in the definition of these two parameters, is talking about the immunity to noise. Okay, cable is always subjected to noise, whether internal noise from the cable itself or external noise, interference, okay, to your signal. So likewise, now I'm talking to you. I'm in a room. There's no external noise. Okay, so you can hear what I'm talking about, or my voice clear. But what happens if there's external noise in my environment? It will kind of impact my voice quality, okay? My clarity my message to you. You will not hear clearly. So likewise for cable signal, okay? We are concerned about noise because now cable, especially Cat6a, we are talking about 500 megahertz in terms of the frequency performance. Okay, the bandwidth is wider compared to Cat5e is only 100, while Cat6a is 500, and Cat8 we are talking about 2 gigahertz frequency. So with such a high bandwidth, noise is very sensitive to noise. So TCL, ELTCL is a very new parameter that came into play about 2 to 3 years ago. Okay, so this helps you to give you assurance that your cable performance will not be affected by noise. Okay, so currently this parameter is not a requirement in the TIA standard that you must have a pass or fail. Okay, so but you can also dictate it in the tester that I want to show whether TCL pass or fail. Okay, that means I want to put it in, okay, to ensure that when I measure, if it's a pass, give me a pass. If it's a fail, give me a fail. Okay, so there are also other pyramid on the third column and the fourth column. Okay, so the third column is already in the tester itself already. Okay, it's already built into the tester. Okay, it's basically for troubleshooting. Okay, now troubleshooting of cables for so many years, okay, usually there's only two major problems when there is a failure, which is one could be a crosstalk related or return loss related. So these are the two major failures. Now for the last column is very more related to not on the cable side, but more on the application side. Okay, like Ethernet testing, Ethernet speed testing up to 10 gig. Okay, PoE testing up to 90 watt or hybrid power. So this one we'll touch on a few slides later. So as you can see, okay, the test parameter that is built in by the standard, okay, is critical. It helps you to determine or give you a assurance on how good or how healthy is your cable. Okay, so these are just some of the screenshots of the test itself. Now we come to the basic cable test, right? So cable tests are benchmarked against the TIA standard or ISO standard. So there is already a standard, okay, stipulated what is the minimum value you need to pass on any cable, be it a Cat5e, Cat6, or Cat6a. Okay, so these are standard, okay, stipulated for every tester maker that they need to put it in. So when you measure, you do not need to set the value. You just set to the reference to the standard that you want. Okay, so a pass standard indicate that means you meet all the performance value stipulated by the standard itself. All right. So, like for example, now Cat6, okay. So DCR, just now I should mention also, is also a additional test to cable. Now, DCR parameter is used to determine if the cable can run PoE. It just gives you assurance that the cable can run PoE. Okay, so in the standards, it's not a criteria to have pass or fail. All right, it's not a criteria, but you can do it by using the tester that you want to set it more stringent. Okay, that you must have a pass or fail. That means you want to have a pass or fail value, right? So this is the next screenshot, okay, saying that if I indicate that the DCR must have a pass or fail, you can see that, okay, this value become a critical measuring point for the overall testing. Okay, so if your DCR fail, your overall cable will also fail. Okay, so you have a choice, okay, to how you want to test, whether you just for the basic standard or you want to have more than just a basic standard. That means you want more stringent testing. Okay, that could indicate if there's any so-called below the benchmark measurement, okay, that will be able to detect. So here, as you can see, I go back to one slide. Okay, so you can see that the Cat6 channel test based on the standard, everything passed. Okay, but when I set to the next slide, Cat6++, which I say that means I want additional pass and fail for other parameter. Okay, so maybe I give you a simple example, like in Singapore. Okay, our Ministry of Education system, you know, our Chinese is not very good subject. Okay, so a lot of people fail. So I mean, in my kid generation, so the MOE decided to come out that the test you take for Chinese not necessary to be counted as pass or fail. Okay, so that means it's something like what I'm trying to tell you about this tester. Okay, so if the standard say you don't need to have DCR fail, you also can set. But if you want it, you just add to ++. That means you want to have more stringent tests. Okay. Now cable are just not testing just for the network usage or for the audio use, phone usage, but actually for other devices as well. Other device is running on different so-called application, different spec. Okay, so be it what you install or be it what you connected, you also want to ensure that whatever device is connected to your cable, it can support. It can support. That's why you can see that most project now, okay, minimum they will install Cat 6A. Okay, that can support up to 500 megahertz. Because also people know that Cat 6A, if you pass all the parameter, okay, your switch, your 10 gig switch should be able to run also. Okay, so it's always good, okay, to look at what is the current future cable or so-called the current latest cable in the market for you to install. Okay, so you still can go for Cat 5e or Cat 6, but you will be subjected to future application. It may not be able to run. Okay, so Cat 6a gives you that assurance, a very important assurance. So other than cable testing, okay, other than cable setting, we also want to talk about another type of testing, what we call, in our term, multi-gate link speed. Okay, so to give you what we are testing is that basically the tester, okay, is testing the signal running on the cable during live operation. Live operation means that the other end of the cable is connected to a live switch. So if your switch is connected to 1 gate or 10 gate, okay, at the end of the output or the end of the outlet, okay, we use our tester to measure the quality of the speed. And how we measure? By SNR parameter. So SNR, the definition of SNR is signal noise ratio. Okay, so it's measuring the quality of a signal versus noise. If your signal is higher than the noise, you get a very positive value. So for example, on the screen, on the display here, the tester, let's say for example 10 gig, I get 3.2 dB, okay, margin for the signal to noise ratio, which is very good. Okay, so but if I go for 2.5 gig, I get even higher because the application now is lower. Okay, so you get a bigger SNR. So SNR is a factor that determines what are the noise affecting your cable, that particular cable. Okay, as I said, noise can be internal or external. So internal could be your cable to cable noise. Also can be your PoE running on the same cable affecting the noise on another cable, another pair. Okay, or external noise. What happens if you run the cable along a big transformer or a big three-phase power supply? Will it affect? Yeah, it will have some form of interference, right? So as you can see, SNR determine live operation. That means actual when you're running the switches. It gives you a measurement of your signal to noise ratio. So besides giving you SNR, you're also measuring your PoE signal at the same time. Okay, so this so-called functions that is built into the tester allow you to measure both. One is your signal to noise ratio and the other one is your PoE. As you can see, the PoE, okay, what we are keen on is the real power. Okay, as you can see my mouse here, talking about real power. What is real power? Power that you receive at your output. Okay, power that deliver from the power source all the way along your cable to your so-called outlet. Why is this real power important? Because you never know. There will be power loss along the cable affected by the impedance of the cable in ohms, resistance of the cable, quality of the copper, okay, or quality of your power source. Okay, so as power travel along the cable, there could be losses. But how much loss do you have? You won't know until you measure the end of the cable. So for example, real power, okay, 78.2. So the power source equipment is a 90 watt. In this case, it's a 90 watt injector that supply 90 watt. Okay, but at the end of the cable, it only give you output of 78.2. So with this 78.2, you can check with the devices. Okay, what is the minimum power or voltage it required to run for a camera or for Wi-Fi IP and so on. Okay, so as you can see, cable measurement is just one of the stages that you need to look at. Even this, like multi-gate link speed and PoE, you also need to consider to ensure your cable can support all this. Now, this may be up and coming for single pair Ethernet in the building. Okay, there are many cable manufacturers are looking into this because a lot of IoT devices, they just need single pair. They do not need all the 4 pair. So there are a lot of development, I would say development by cable manufacturer, by device maker, looking into this area under the single pair Ethernet. So in future, you might see this more, okay? You might see this more, okay? It's not just for the IoT devices. Single pair Ethernet is also very commonly used in the automotive. As you can see, most cars now are so-called intelligent. They have lots of sensor for your safety, for your comfort, okay? Inside, there's a lot of single pair Ethernet cable that connected up to the sensor, okay? So in enterprise building or factory deployment, okay, why single pair Ethernet cable is option is preferred, okay? The 3 main points: lighter, lower cost, and longer distance, okay? Because in some factory deployment, they do not need 1 gig. They just need 100 meg application. So it can support up to 1 kilometer and also can support PoE, okay, and so on. So these are the things just to look up for and keep in mind, okay, as we move on into the cable transformation, especially in buildings or smart building or data center. Now, fiber optics, traditionally we test based on losses, based on the length. Okay, there's not much changes other than the fiber cable have changed, right? Like for multi-mode, now the highest grade of multi-mode is called the OM5, right? So the change of fiber basically is talking about able to perform kind of like better losses or higher bandwidth. Okay, so currently what I'm talking about, the fiber testing, is what we call a tier 1, which referred to as a OLTS, not OTDR, OLTS. OTDR is a tier 2 testing. So when we measure fiber, okay, for our application, for our industry, I'm talking about industry as in structured cabling industry, okay, our fiber can no longer go more than 1 kilometer. Okay, it is very uncommon. Why? Because of application. Okay, the IEEE came up with application like 10 gig, 100 gig, or 1 gig. They are the one that tell you what is the maximum length of fiber you can run in the building or building to building. Okay, so if you are talking about like 10 gig, okay, I think they specified you cannot run more than 300 meters of multi-mode. Okay, so fiber, we measure the losses, we measure the length. All right. I will talk about the last point about hybrid power optical fiber testing later. Okay. Now, the tester itself, of course, today my main focus is also talking about our brand, our Test Pro, okay, are capable to do network tests. Now, this is more on the layer 3 testing. where IT administrator usually use it, okay, on their laptop to do ping or to do connectivity check. Now, our tester can read all this information for the IT administrator. In other words, it can see what are the devices connected. It can give you a switch detail. That means, are you connecting to a Cisco switch, Aruba switch, Dell switch, okay? And in that switch, is it a 1 gig switch, a 10 gig switch? Okay, it can give you all the detail of the switch. It can give you MAC address, IP address, right? So the tester itself, okay, can perform all these tests, especially for people who deal with a lot of network. Okay, they're handling IT network. They want to troubleshoot their connectivities. Okay, so with this test, we can perform many functions. Okay, even like to check the packet size through traffic generation or traffic monitoring. Okay, to see if there's any losses, packet losses, and so on. Okay, now physical infrastructure, that means we can connect up the cable to the tester, or we also can use Wi-Fi modes to test what is connected in the Wi-Fi as well. Okay, so you can see that the tester perform various functions for network. Okay, wireless or wired. So that talking about the cable testing, talking about network testing, now we come PoE. Okay. Power over Ethernet, that's what we know it, okay, come in various voltage because of the changes in the devices. When it started many years back, okay, it's only 15 watts. And the only device that is connected to the PoE is usually two devices, either a camera, a fixed camera, or a Wi-Fi IP. Okay, these are very common devices that we see link up to PoE. But nowadays, a lot of devices are designed for automotive, like as I say in the car. Okay, devices for building, smart building, that means connected to LED lighting. Some of the building sensor, okay, are running on PoE for factory automation and so on. Then there's a the third category of PoE, okay, and which we call it hybrid fiber. Not the fiber running on power, but hybrid fiber. That means cable manufacturers are making this fiber. Okay, in the same jacket, you have fiber cable plus copper wire. Okay, that's why they call it hybrid power optical fiber. Okay. So PoE standard, who determined that? IEEE standard. IEEE standards, okay, not only determine the Ethernet speed, but they also look at the PoE requirement. Okay, as we look at the PoE requirements, now people are just going for the latest. Okay, whether they need or they don't need, they just want to go for the latest. Why? Because they want to cater for future application as well. Okay, so as you can see that we have various voltage, okay, specified on the equipment, which we call PSE, power source equipment. Whatever power source equipment that you use, be it a switch, which we provide data and power like N-span, or a separate power injector, which is classified as a mid-span. Okay, they will not provide you the power as in the spec because there will be losses along the cable. So IEEE also, okay, specified the actual power output, which you see on the last column that I highlighted. So for example, 90 watt, your minimum output power must be 71.3. Anything lower, consider fail. For your 15 watt, your minimum must be at least 12.95. Anything lower, consider fail. So this is already stipulated by the IEEE standard. Likewise, all this standard is already downloaded to the tester. Okay, so all these are already measured based on the IEEE standard. Okay, so this is just a typical layout talking about what are the changes in the market that you can see in future, talking about using PoE devices. Okay, so in a nutshell is that if let's say there's a new building, or a new project, you can see that they will try to utilize all these PoE devices. Okay, as I said, cable is all the same. Okay, all connected to the same cable, which ease on the maintenance if they need to replace. Okay, ease on the cable tray. Okay, they don't need to have a separate cable tray because all these are same cable. Okay, and the cable itself can connect it to various kind of devices and so on. Okay, so take into consideration, especially if you are looking into the design of the cabling infrastructure in the building. Okay, not just planning for your network output or for your Wi-Fi output. There are a lot of devices out there, okay, that is able to integrate to your cable. Can things go wrong? Of course, there are things go wrong. I mean, there are a lot of consideration when it comes to PoE. Okay, sometimes you got the wrong spec of the power source. Okay, or over provisions or not enough power because your PSE could be a shared type of power source, right? So it depends on which output draw more power. Okay, so PoE is very important because at the end of the day, if you don't do testing, you only can assume. Okay, you only can assume that it's delivering the power. So with the testing, okay, you will tell you what's the real power, what's the actual load. Okay, so ability to perform load testing is critical because first, it gives you a real report already that your PoE is supplying this to your devices. Okay, so testing is always very critical. It's not just assume, okay, and leave it there. Okay, so it is very important about all this testing. So this is again talk about the so-called real power devices. So I have 3 tester screen here. The first tester screen is what we call identifying. It identify your PSE. So like for example, in this slide here, it identify that your power source equipment is a 90-watt spec. Okay, and it will give you the table. Okay, that means the allocate power must meet the spec of 71. All right, so then when you have that, okay, you can do a real power measurement. That means a load test. Okay, so you can see that I get 80.2. Why? Because actually my cable, when I do the testing, is a short cable. It's not a long cable. Also, there's not much losses. Okay, so if I run the full length, like 90 meter, probably I get 71 watts, more losses. Okay, so real power is what you want to know. This is more important. Okay, right. So testing PoE over single pair Ethernet, as I said, there's a lot of development now. Okay, so currently for the single pair Ethernet is mainly used in building or factory automation. Then there's a single pair Ethernet for automotive. Now this one automotive, we already working with some company. Okay, so for example, like GM doing this, or those wire harnessing company that's making single pair Ethernet for automotive. Okay. So for building and factory automation, which is on your left side, okay, it's a different standard for comparing with automotive. Okay, so we're talking about up to 1 kilometer of cable length. So as the standards are finalized, you will see in detail what is the specification for single pair Ethernet for PoE. So this is just talking about again what will be the future kind of switches looking at single pair Ethernet. Okay, so again, we are not talking about 4 pair, we are talking about single pair. Okay, so there will be devices. Then we come to a topic that we are just highlighted earlier that I want to talk about hybrid power optic fiber. So the picture on the right, okay, show one jacket which you have 2 core fiber in LC connected to LC and 2 copper wire, the red and the black, Now, this copper wire is not your typical structure cabling 4-pair wire, because this wire are talking about very thick wire, okay, as thick as 18 gauge. It also can go up to 12 gauge, even thicker, okay. So this copper wire, the purpose is to deliver power, to deliver voltage to the devices, okay. So you can see in the tester itself, okay, our tester is designed to allow dual measurement, okay. You can measure fiber at the same time on the tester. You can measure the voltage output, okay, if it is connected to a power source, okay. So this is another picture, okay, showing the tester is connected to the adapter, okay. So this adapter accepts fiber cable plus copper wire. If your copper cable is not connected to a power, okay, what we measure is called the DCR in impedance. So like for example, on the screen here, tester screen, I get 17.18 ohms for the cable, okay. It measures the resistance of the cable. If it's connected to power, I will measure the voltage on the tester itself, all right. So again, we are talking about a low voltage, not talking about the kind of high voltage we are talking about. Voltage, I mean the low voltage for your devices. Give you one of the practical example that only one client currently is using. They are in the mining industry. So you know, mining, there's a lot of tunnel, okay. So in the tunnel, they actually connected to a few cameras in the tunnel for safety purpose, okay. You know, copper cable can never support the camera in the tunnel because of the distance. The tunnel can reach up to more than 1 kilometer, okay. So they need a fiber cable to support the camera devices. But what about power? They also cannot have local power inside the tunnel. Safety is one of the issues. So they need to run a copper wire to support the camera. So likewise, our tester come in to enable them to test fiber signal at the same time power, okay, on the same tester instead of two separate testers, okay. If let's say two separate, I'm talking about one power tester, one fiber tester, okay. So this is not necessary. With our tester, we can measure both for hybrid power. So that is one application that I'm talking about, which is a real case. At the end of all testing, at the end of everything, you need report, you need documentation, okay, to show your client, to show your boss, to show your team, okay, that all this cable is not just testing on the physical layer, but it also measure the multigate, okay, it also measure the power at the same time, okay, because this report is critical. In case in future something wrong with certain link, you can refer back to the documentation, okay, to see is it measuring the same as your previous report, right? So report, again, I would say is a kind of a holistic approach to any project, okay? When you finish any project, any contractor finish project, they need to submit this test report to signal a completion, signal a handover of the infrastructure to the client, signal that they can get paid, which is more important, okay? At the end of the day, contractor want to get paid, so they have to perform all this testing, okay? Even multi-gate testing, PoE testing, and so on. Of course, the tester, if you have a different kind of cable like coax, again, coax is still not a dying media. Surprisingly, there are some projects still using coaxial cable, not for camera, more for low data speed, okay? So if you have coaxial cable, okay, we do have adapter to test coaxial as well, okay? So it's about close to an hour, okay? I hope that you can just type in your question in the chat group, or you can unmute later. You can ask any question. Okay, so what I'm trying to emphasize here is that, cable testing is not just purely testing on cable. You need to test further. You need to test your PoE infrastructure. You need to test your network infrastructure. At the end of the day, whoever running the cable is responsible to ensure that everything can run. Okay, if I build the road, I have to build the road to such a quality that F1 car can run. That kind of quality, though it may not be necessary. All right, but why I want to build that? Because I do not know. Maybe one day the customer decide to have an F1 car on the road. They have to make sure that the road is paved nicely. Okay, and I do not know if, let's say, in future, what kind of traffic will the customer be like? Okay, so to ensure minimum slowdown on the traffic, minimum jam, I have to make sure that my bandwidth or the cable cater for enough margin, cater for enough bandwidth, right? So this is kind of very critical. Okay, even for your home, how often do you re-cable in your home? Nobody re-cable in the home. Sometimes when in the home, the cable can last for 10 years, even 20 years. So this is the concept that I'm trying to share. Okay, testing is important for your cable that will able to support you down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Always think of the objective when you run infrastructure, because you will never tear it down. You never replace. You only replace equipment. You only replace device. Easier for you than replace cable. Okay. So the tester itself that Zidabit is helping us to promote is one we call a certification tester called Test Pro. Okay, so for example, if you are submitting for cable warranty, either through CommScope or through Legrand or through Belden or through Simon, you need to submit a test report that is approved by them. Okay, so all our testers are approved by major cable brand. Okay, all the brands that you know in the market that are existing is already approved of tester to use on their cable. Then I have another unit, okay, which sometimes contractors say, oh, I do not need certification report, but I just want a simple tester that is good enough to tell me my cable works, my PoE works, my network works. So we have this tester called the NSA, Network Service Assistant Tester, NSA for short. So it's just one unit of tester. Okay, at the other end, you need a terminator to plug in to close the loop for testing. All right, so we have two range of tester, one for certification type, one for qualification. Okay, so you can approach Zidabit, Leo, okay, for more information on this tester. So I hope in this 1 hour time, I'm able to present you sufficient information in terms of the testing, in terms of the cable infrastructure. And I hope that I think feel free to ask questions, as now we want to see what comment you have, what question you have that we can answer on the spot. Okay, so I pass back to Leo.
Okay, thank you, Tyson. Yeah, there are one question inside the chat box there. Can you see that?
Yeah, so category cabling factor slide 1.570 dB means what? Okay, let me go back. Are they referring to which one they are referring to? Category cabling slide. (1.5B). No, Norula's one. Could you help me to clarify?
Hi, Noru, you ada dekat line tak? Kalau boleh, you can open your mic lah to speak. Yeah, there's a slide with that title. I think this one.
Okay. Okay. .5 B. Oh, okay, okay. Okay. So legacy device, talking about on a legacy system. Okay, this 1.5B is talking about the what call that, the, if I'm not mistaken, is talking about the number of outlet you can install. Okay. So for the 70, I think B, this B could be a mistake. It could be 70 meter of cable install, okay, connected to a device. So you know, when we follow TIA standard, the ISO standard is stipulated if you are doing a channel link standard is up to 100 meter. Okay, so in 100 meter, but for IoT devices, some IoT devices can go beyond 100 meter. Okay, okay, so 70 meter, that means exceed more than 70 meter, that means this can go actually more than up to more than 100 meter, some of the devices. I don't know whether does that help to, because IoT devices are not running on high speed. Okay, are not running on high speed, but very low speed, like 10 meg or 100 meg. So sometimes IoT devices, you can run longer. So again, the main point of this table is, you know, we talk about different category. Sometimes people want to go back a lower category. The reason is because of cost, or reason because they have existing product they want to push out. Okay. However, Cat 6A, okay, in this table here is that it allows you to support all gigabit link up to 10 gig, okay, for Cat 6A. And in one of the row, I put there subject to alien crosstalk testing, which I didn't touch on. Okay, so when the Cat 6 came out in the market, there was this issue, what we call alien crosstalk. So alien crosstalk means, okay, cable to cable noise. So you know, when you run cable in the project, normally you don't run single cable, but you bundle them in a bundle. Okay, you tie them together, right, in a bundle. So because of the bundle tightness, okay, in the cable to cable crosstalk could be one of the critical impact to your signal. Okay, why? Because it's running on Cat 6 is running on 250 megahertz, which is higher frequency than Cat 5e. Okay, so higher frequency tends to generate the signal, tend to affect the signal outside of the jacket. The signal could penetrate through the jacket. So if it penetrates through the jacket, cable to cable, let's say, for example, you two cables together, it could affect the noise. That's why when Cat 6 was developed, there was this requirement to do alien crosstalk testing. Nobody liked to do it, okay? Nobody wants to do it because you're talking about additional tests beside your cable test, okay? So it's a very complex testing. Complex also means that you need two sets of testers to do the alien crosstalk testing, and not just one set. Okay, and you need to perform on a bundle multiple times. Okay, multiple times to get alien crosstalk testing pass. Okay, so that's why people never want to bring up this subject, because it's not easy to test. Okay, so how to avoid this testing? Very simple way. Use shielded cable. Once you use shielded cable, okay, alien crosstalk should not be a alien crosstalk should not be a thing anymore. Okay, you won't have any alien crosstalk. Okay, but shielding, of course, you must make sure you do a proper job of shielding. I hope that clarified the questions. Any other questions anyone has? You can just type or unmute. Okay, PoE deployment types like the measure value at power devices actually is measured at 100 meters away from source based on standard. Yes, okay. All right. So IEEE stipulated the so-called spec of the power source equipment, the PSE equipment. So when you go to the market, okay, when you buy a switch, an N-span switch, that means maybe a Cisco switch that provide you data and power. So it will tell you what are the power output they will supply, either 15 watt, 30 watt, 60 watt, or 90 watt. Okay, so all these are specified by the equipment manufacturer, which is following the IEEE. Okay, but at the end of the day, okay, your output. So the actual power, okay, is talking about the worst case scenario. Worst case means that you're running the maximum length, which is 100-meter channel. So at actual power at your worst case length, you should get according to the specified value. So for 15 watt is 12.95. So based on his question is, yes, this is based on standard. Okay. So again, the power device may not need 12.95. Some devices need lesser than that. Okay. But if you want to follow the standard, this is the standard. So device to device again varies. Okay. So I hope that answered the question for that. When we test, the result shall not. Yes. If you want to pass the standards, okay, this is the standard that stipulated pass or fail. So if your measure value when you do PoE test, when you get the real power or actual power is less than the table here, you will get a failure. So in other words, you fail the IEEE standard. Okay, you should not be less. So if you are less, okay, it could be two reasons. One, your power source equipment could be a problem. Second thing, your cable could be a problem. Okay, I mean, how the power run over the cable, it depends on the quality of the cable, the copper quality. Yeah. Okay, so we have to use this benchmark, should not be less than this. Okay, so any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, we still got some time to answer the question here. So if you if you guys got any technical problem or question, you can ask Dixon here, since he's a very professional to give you a solution to solve what we call the common problem in which we are facing in the market.
Yeah. So just to share with you some of the things that I'm currently in a 10-day quarantine in a Singapore hotel because I just came back from Dubai. So just as you can see that I'm in a room, I cannot go anywhere. So I need some interaction. So feel free to ask me any questions. I want to help as much as possible. And of course, I also want to promote my tester, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, this tester is designed to support contractors or installers or end user, okay, that you can use it for cable testing, you can use it for network testing, you can use it for PoE testing. So it's a multi-purpose cable tester, okay.